This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek Radio at Pacifica, and I'm going to be interviewing Marion Jackson, who is the former president of San Francisco Officers for Justice. So, Marion, why don't you talk about history in the police department and why you formed Officers for Justice in San Francisco Police Department?
I was a 36-and-a-half-year veteran of the San Francisco Police Department. I spent most of my career in investigations, which is the Inspectors Bureau. I was part of the police who formed the Officers for Justice in 1968. And also part of that was Hangisto, who was the sheriff at one time. And we formed because we felt that there was no justice in the police department, especially for black officers. No promotions, no anything. You couldn't even get in. Actually, you couldn't even get in the bureau. At the time I came, it was mainly for whites.
And you had the riots at that time?
That's correct. Yeah.
What happened in San Francisco at that time?
It was a lot of civil distress because of what was happening, especially in the black community. In fact, you were having riots all over the United States in the black communities. And part of organizing the Officers for Justice was also to protect and inform the black community. And we're not only a police organization, we're a community-based organization. And we inform the community of certain things that are happening there.
And, I mean, this issue of racism, it seems like we're going backward. The actions in Ferguson, where Michael Brown is killed and then left on the ground unarmed, and many, many murders now throughout the United States of not just African Americans, but Latinos. It seems like the police forces, there's no restraint and there's no accountability and no transparency. Is that the case in San Francisco?
I think there are too many shootings by the police in San Francisco for me. We have to do more crisis intervention and also problem solving. Shooting folks is not the answer, right? And it appears that we can always justify shooting someone, right, whether they're armed or not. And when I first became a police officer, we had to use other means of subduing people instead of shooting them, because shooting people back then, you had to really, a lot of paperwork, a lot of everything. You have to answer to someone, and at the same time, there was also a coroner's inquest, right? That you had to show that you had no other alternative but to shoot that person. I think I haven't, we forget that we can say drop the knife or drop the gun instead of just shooting someone, right? And again, it goes back to what we discussed before, militarization of the police department, right? Where we always in a position of readiness, of fear, which is in the Army that's used, when you in another country trying to take over that country. It's not for domestic policing. It's a whole different issue because here we have rights.
But this intervention, and we talk about militarization overseas, where young men or women go to other countries and to occupy these countries and then come back here and are hired by the police department. Some of the people at Abu Ghraib who committed these tortures were from jails, from prisons, as prison guards, and they come back here. Isn't that part of what's happening, though, in our society, that the wars abroad are being brought back home to our communities, particularly African American, Latino communities?
Right, I believe so. But the same thing is going to happen after a while, right? You see those soldiers who are coming back, they commit a lot of suicides, right? Because of things that they did in other countries. I mean, mainly. So I would hate to see that start happening in the police department, because taking a life is serious, and it takes a toll on you. I mean, you may kill that person, but you kill something in you too. I mean, I've had friends who has killed people, and they still are not over it. That, to me, that officer don't make a good officer afterwards, right? When you let them back on the streets, they either shoot too quick are too late, right? So it's bad. So I think it's a lot of retraining need to be done.
And the disparity of wealth now. I mean, a large number of young African American youth, there's 50% unemployment of African American youth in San Francisco, Hunters Point, Bayview. Latino youth, I mean, their future is pretty barren and getting worse for many. Do you think that that is giving cause for more repression against these youth?
Well, police has always been the oppressor for the black, coming out of slavery, right? It is. And when you have low economic communities, like black community, you're going to see violence, more violence, because you have them compacted in a situation where they're fighting for survival, right? Food, money, or whatever. And psychology has shown that creates a violent situation. Economics has always been the driving force behind policing itself, right? Because we police for the 1%, basically. As you know, we protect the people with the money, not necessarily the poor people. And until we change that mindset, that we start policing for the people, right? And that's why we don't really do community policing in San Francisco, because in community policing, the community has something to say about how you police them. And it has always been, especially in the black and brown community, where the police dictate what happens to you, right? You don't see that in the affluent white communities and certain other communities, because they truly do community policing.
So you're saying there's a double standard
Of course it is.
in the treatment of the white community in San Francisco and other communities around the country, and the black and Latino community.
Right.
And it's gotten worse, you say, in San Francisco and probably other communities since the 60s and the 68 rebellion. Why is that?
Economics, money. When there's, when jobs get scarce, and so you'll see racism raises its head. I mean, that's throughout history, if you look at history itself, right? We're on the lowest totem pole. So certain other groups don't want to see you get a job because they feel that you take a job from them. The same thing is right now is happening with Latinos, especially the immigrants that's coming in. Now you hear a certain section saying they're taking our jobs and so forth, even though those are jobs that they don't want, right? But they use that.
So you're saying there's a rise in racism because of the economic crisis and capitalism.
That's part of it, but it also becomes a mindset in certain communities, like it's kind of like a class structure here, who's deserving and who's not, right, kind of thing, and the blacks are the ones that are, if the people feel that we're undeserving, even though we had a large part in making America what it is on free labor on our backs. And even after the slavery, the Jim Crow era, where we were in a position what the Mexicans are in now, right? We took jobs for less money, did more work, so forth. The history of America shows that it's kind of still a class structure, and we're the lower class. And even even saying that, the justice system is a system that makes money, right? Crime pays, and crime pays very well. So if you arrest me, I can give 15, 20 jobs to people, right? The police officer, the judge, the lawyer, the public defender, social worker, other groups, right? So that's a lot of money, right? So, and somebody has to be in this system to make it work. We're the most readily identifiable just because of our color.
So you're saying it's like a business.
It is a business.
And is that true with the prison industry complex? Is
Yeah,
that the
I mean,
same
you
thing?
can say it. Cheap labor, right? Some of these prisons still hire out the inmates to do jobs. that they get 6 cents or 5 cents an hour on, and the complex get a lot more than that, right? So, and it's beginning to be more privatized. And this is not new. It came out of slavery too. When blacks were arrested just for walking the street because somebody needed to plow the fields and pick the cotton and work on the railroad, right? And it hasn't changed. It just changed the way they did business, but it's the same.
So these racist incidents, racist texts, and the fact that all of a sudden it's become a big scandal. Are you saying that they were aware of this in the leadership of the police department? I mean, it sounds like they're just finding out that this stuff is going on. It seems like it's been going on for a long time.
Right.
And
they should have known. All the other officers knew, right? I mean, it's just now coming out because, and the only reason it's coming out because of, by accident, things that happened. This person getting arrested, and then the federal government going through its texts. But we, as officers, we see it every day. We know who's the racist officer or who acts in a certain manner. But you'll never get officers to talk about it or tell, right? Because if you do, then you're ostracized also, right?
And some of these racist texts mention the present president of Officers for Justice, Yolanda Williams, in a derogatory racist term. Why would they attack Yolanda Williams?
Because she's outspoken, and she's telling people what normally you wouldn't hear from a police officer in the police department.
So they see her as a threat.
Of course.
To their continued practices.
Yeah. And her call for change, I'm not sure if the police department won't change.
And this has been going on for a long time, and you've tried to get more community relations and more control of the community over the hiring of police. Many police come into San Francisco who have no knowledge of San Francisco, no knowledge of the communities, the African American community, the Latino community, and they're in charge of you life and death.
Right. And you're right. They don't even live in San Francisco. When I came in, you had to live in San Francisco. So, and I policed the community I lived in, right? So you see those people every day, right? So it was truly community policing because there's certain things you couldn't do because you had to live with your kids, had to go to school, your family, your church, everything was there. And now most police, I would say over 90-some% of the police probably live out of the city. They come in and work and they go home. They have no interest in the city itself other than making money.
It's just a job.
Yeah, it's just a job. Right. So, and right now we're trying to, OFJ is trying to try to make a change in that we need more officers who have an interest in the community that they police, and that's part of the community policing segment of it.
And what do you see the future? Because it seems like this militarization of the police is growing. The wars are expanding. It's becoming very difficult for young people, African American youth, Latino youth, and working class youth to go to college. I mean, the crushing of people seems to increase actually in this society.
Actually, I think it's a good time for change. I mean, we very rarely see this, maybe every 50 years or so. And everybody's calling for a different kind of policing, right? Because of the Ferguson and some of the other stuff that's coming to light, right? Because they see the inhumane treatment of other, especially blacks, but certainly of Latinos too, in the police society, and I think this is a good time for change because everybody's uniting together, saying the same thing, that we need to change the way we do policing.
And in Ferguson, they had many witnesses to the murder of Michael Brown by Darren Wilson, yet the grand jury decided not to press any charges. He's pretty much scot-free. What do you think about what happened in Ferguson and the lessons of that?
I think it was certainly was injustice done, especially to Michael Brown. there's no way I should be able to get away with killing a person unarmed that I know, and I track him down like an animal and kill him. And even him himself said that when he was shooting him, he thought he was like a monster. He could see demon in his face while he was shooting. Well, to do something like that, you have to dehumanize people, and that's what happened in wars. You have to dehumanize the people that you're fighting against, right? And to me, that's not policing in the United States. Sometimes police officers forget who they work for. You don't work for the mayor. You don't work for the police chief. You work for the community. Those are our tax dollars that pay your salary. Yeah, but we seem to forget that when we're in the black and brown community, right? It's our way or nothing, you know. So and we've seen a lot of examples just since Ferguson. I mean, you can see that the police rule certain communities. They dictate and they excuse when officers do stuff.